Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire. If you are reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the personality of God, Narayana. Aduna Narayana Rishi, the Supreme Personality, and to Mother Saraswati, the Goddess of Learning, and to Shri Srinivasa, Ashtabhreshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Nashiki. By recognizing classes on the Bhagavata, by ending of service with pure, all that is services of heart is almost completely destroyed. Loving service of the personality of God, which praise will translate in songs, stories, and then healing of the
Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnana-jnana-shalakaya Chakshur-militam yena Tasmai Shri-Gurave Namah. On my spiritual office to open my eyes with the torch of my knowledge, I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yat kripa tamham vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam. I offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual master, the deliverer of the fallen souls. His mercy turns the dumb into eloquent speakers and enables the lame to cross the mountains. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you for inviting, and I feel myself very humbled because the topic given is the theme that I was given is the suffering of liberated souls. So whatever I speak is just theoretical knowledge because it's a high subject matter that I haven't realized yet. So the shlokas that we're supposed to recite is from shlok 1 to 16, and then we'll talk about text 16. So we'll start by text 1, the translation. Sukdev Goswami said, Lord Shri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, seeing that the Yamuna river had been contaminated by the black snake Kaliya, desired to purify the river, and thus the Lord banished him from it. Do you want me to read all the shlokas or it's one by one?
One by one.
Okay. Okay. So text 2 now.
King Parikshit inquired, O learned sage, please explain how the Supreme Personality of Godhead chastised the serpent Kaliya within the unfathomable waters of Yamuna, and how it was that Kaliya had been living there for so many ages.
O Brahmana, the unlimited Supreme Personality of Godhead freely acts according to his own desires. Who could be situated when hearing the lecture of the
Magnanimous.
Passage would come as a cowherd boy when born.
Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, within the river Kalindi Yamuna was a lake inhabited by a certain Kali, whose fiery poison constantly heated and boiled its waters. Indeed, the vapors thus created were so poisonous that birds flying over the contaminated lake would fall down into it.
The wind blowing over the deadly lake carried droplets of water to the shore. Simply by coming in contact with that poisonous breeze, all vegetation and creatures on the shore died.
Lord Krishna saw how the Kaliya serpent had polluted the Yamuna river with his terribly powerful poison. Since Krishna had descended from the spiritual world specifically to subdue envious demons, the Lord immediately climbed to the top of a very high Kadamba tree and prepared himself for battle. He tightened his belt, slapped his arms, and then jumped into the poisonous water.
When the Supreme Personality of Godhead landed in the serpent's lake, the snakes there became extremely agitated and began breathing heavily, further polluting it with volumes of poison. The force of the Lord's entrance into the lake caused it to overflow on all sides, and poisonous, fearsome waves flooded the surroundings, lands up to the distance of 100 bow lengths. This is not all amazing, however, for the Supreme Lord possesses infinite strength.
Krishna began sporting in Kaliya's lake like a lordly elephant, swirling his mighty arms and making the water resound in various ways. When Kaliya heard these sounds, he understood that someone was trespassing in his lake. The serpent could not tolerate this and immediately came forward.
Kaliya saw that Sri Krishna, who wore yellow silken garments, was very delicate. His attractive body shining like a glowing white cloud, his chest bearing the mark of Srivasta, his face smiling beautifully, and his feet resembling the whorl of a lotus flower. The Lord was playing fearlessly in the water. Despite his wonderful appearance, the envious Kaliya furiously bit him on the chest and then completely enwrapped him in his coils.
Text 10. When the members of the cowherd community who had accepted Krishna as their dearmost friend saw him enveloped in the snake's coil, motionless, they were greatly disturbed. They had offered Krishna everything, their very selves, their families, their wealth, wives, and all pleasures. At the sight of the Lord in the clutches of the Kaliya snake, their intelligence became deranged by grief, lamentation, and fear, and thus they fell to the ground.
The cows, bulls, and female cows, in great distress, called out piteously to Krishna. Fixing their eyes on him, they stood still in fear, as if ready to cry, but too shocked to shed tears.
Text 12. In Vrindavan area, there then arose all three types of fearful omens, those on the earth, those in the skies, and those in the bodies of living creatures, which announced imminent danger.
Seeing the inauspicious omens, Nanda Maharaj and the other cowherd men were fearful, for they knew that Krishna had gone to herd the cows that day without his elder brother Balaram, because they had dedicated their minds to Krishna, accepting him as their very life. They were unaware of his great power and opulence. Thus, they concluded that the inauspicious omens indicated he had met with death, and they were overwhelmed with grief, lamentation, and fear. All the inhabitants of Vrindavan, including the children, women, and elderly persons, thought of Krishna just as a cow thinks of her helpless young calf, and thus these poor suffering people rushed out of the village, intent upon finding him.
So we'll recite text 16. Tam satha kadaran vikshya Bhagwan Madhavo Bala Prahasya Kinchin No Vacha Prabhavagnyo Nujashyaha Tam satha kataran viksha Bhagwan Madhavo Bala Prahasya Kinchin No Vacha Prabhavagnyo Nujashyaha. Translation. The Supreme Lord Balram, the master of all transcendental knowledge, smiled and said nothing when he saw the residents of Vrindavan in such distress, since he understood the extraordinary power of his younger brother. You want to repeat the shloka?
Yes.
Okay.
Tamstatha kataran viksha
Bhagavan Madhavo Bala Prahasya Kinchino Vacha
Prabhavagno
Prabhavagno
Tamstatha kataran vikshya
Bhagwan Madhavo Bala
Prahasya Kinchino Vacha
Tam tatha kataran vikshya
Bhagavan Madhavo Bala
Prasya Kinchino Vacha
Prabhavagno अनुजस्य सह
तां तथा कातरं वीक्ष्य
भगवान् माधवो बलः
प्रहस्य किञ्चनो वाचा
रहस्य किञ्चिनो वाचा
भगवान् माधवो बलः
भगवान् माधवो बलः
रहस्य किञ्चिनो
वाचा
Translation: The Supreme Lord Balaram, the master of all transcendental knowledge, smiled and said nothing when he saw the residents of Vrindavan in such distress, since he understood the extraordinary power of his younger brother. Purport by Srila Prabhupada, by disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Sri Balaram is a plenary expansion of Lord Krishna and is thus not different from him. They are in fact the same absolute truth manifest in separate forms. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Lord Balaram was laughing because he thought, Krishna never cares to play with me in my form of Sheshanag, but now he is playing with his ordinary mundane snake named Kaliya. The question may arise as to why Krishna and Balaram allowed their loving devotees to suffer such great anguish during Krishna's temporary imprisonment within the coils of Kaliya. It must be remembered that because inhabitants of Vrindavan were completely liberated souls, they did not experience material emotions. When they saw their beloved Krishna in apparent danger, their love for him intensified to the highest degree, and thus they merged completely into ecstasy of love for him. The whole situation has to be seen from the spiritual point of view, or it will not be seen at all. So the theme was given to me was the suffering of the liberated souls. I feel myself very humbled because whatever I speak is just a theoretical knowledge, has not been realized. So please excuse any offenses that I make, and whatever I say is just from my gurus that I have learned. So we see in this shloka that how Kaliya, when Krishna was in the coils of Kaliya, the inhabitants of Vrindavan were suffering so much of pain. So we'll talk about different types of pain today. We'll talk about the material pain and the spiritual pain. We'll talk about the suffering and how the suffering is good or bad. So to quote the suffering that the devotees of Vrindavan were suffering, were like, it's not material suffering. So to emphasize this point, Srila Jiva Goswami in its Priti Sandarbha, Anuched is 121, it's like verses, but this is an Anuched 121, in which he clearly says that the suffering of the Pandavas and the other feelings of separation from the Lord is not material suffering. So whatever the Brajvasis were suffering, so much of pain that they were, Nand Baba and Yashoda Maya almost fainted. They were crying and crying because they were seeing that Krishna was in the coil of serpent Kaliya. But that suffering, if we see from the eyes of Srila Jiva Goswami, it's not material suffering. So we'll dive deep into it, that why then the devotees suffer. So before that, I just want to clarify that the liberated soul, Nitya Siddhas, whatever they suffer, it's not material suffering. And the suffering that Nitya Baddha, like myself, suffer, it's material suffering. But the suffering can be classified into material and spiritual if it makes closer to Krishna, if it makes us closer to Krishna. So the Jiva Goswami in the same Anuched in the Priti Sandarbha says that these sufferings are the part of Sanchari Bhav. So if I need to define Sanchari Bhav, it's a transitory feeling that which uproots, which comes from our eternal relationship. Each one of us has an eternal relationship with the Lord. Be it as a friend, be as a servant. So that before that Sthai Bhav is called a Sthai Bhav, the eternal relationship. before that sthai bhav comes into our heart, the sanchari bhav comes, which will, enrich the sthai bhav. So the sanchari bhav is, I would say, this transitory feeling. It's sometimes we feel so close to Krishna. So that's why these sufferings are the part of sanchari bhav. So, and this sanchari bhav increases the devotee's love for the Lord. So the suffering in this way, it's good, right? We like that suffering if it allows us to become closer to Shri Krishna. So that's Jiva Goswami is explaining and making it very clear from the suffering of the Pandavas. Because if we see that Pandavas suffered lot and lot, going into exile for many, many years, and the having fire in the house. So from the material point of view, the Kunti Maharani has to suffer so much. From the material point of view, if we see, we would not like the suffering, right? All those suffering the Pandavas and Kunti Maharani had gone through. But as we see from Jiva Goswami, that this is nice, this is nice to have this kind of sufferings. And therefore, the Lord deliberately puts his devotees into this kind of suffering to increase the sanchari bhav, that means to increase the devotion towards him. So suffering for the liberated souls is the separation from Krishna. That's what we are trying to see. The inhabitants of the Brajvasis were they were so worried, they were so sad, they were so much in pain, because only a single thought from them getting separate from Krishna is just kind of almost killing them. So therefore, the Kunti Maharani says that we really want this kind of sufferings again and again. In Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 8th chapter 25, the translation is that Kunti Maharani says, I wish that all those calamities would happen again and again, so that we could see you again and again. For seeing you means that we'll no longer see repeated birth and death. That's what the devotees are asking the Kunti Maharani, setting as an example that we would like to have suffering if that is allowing us to going closer to you. In the same 10th canto, 32 chapter, text 20, the translation is that but the reason that like how Krishna puts us in suffering, but sometimes we see that he never responds, he doesn't care for us, but there is a reason for it, right? That why Krishna does not reciprocate so quickly with us or with Brajvasis. This can be applied in the cases of Brajvasis as well. The translation says that, but the reason I do not immediately reciprocate the affection of living beings, even when they worship me, or gopis, is that I want to intensify their loving devotion. They then become like a poor man who has gained some wealth and then lost it, and who thus become so anxious about it that he can think nothing else. So this is a shloka which comes when the Ras Leela was going on, and Krishna disappears immediately from the midst of gopis, and they were crying and weeping and searching for Krishna. So that's what the Krishna is saying, that how a poor man gets wealth, and then when suddenly it loses it, they become so anxious that, oh, when I'm gonna get it. So just to increase the devotion of us towards Krishna, sometimes they don't reciprocate our feelings or put us in suffering. So as I said, there is also a term called as catharsis. It's an English term, obviously, but which means that the meaning literally goes that sometimes like when our heart is so full, you literally want to just cry out, and that will make you feel so better, right? So then isn't it very kind of contradictory that by crying you feel happy? It's kind of very contradictory. But that's what it goes in here as well, that in separation, in suffering, even though it looks very from the material point of view, it says that there's so much of pain in suffering, and so much of sorrows in suffering and separation. But it's like catharsis, you feel so much of joy as well in that suffering, and you feel so much of happiness when you are separated from the Lord. And that's why I'll also talk about why there is a union and separation, and why our goal is Vipralamba. So if we see from the case from the devotees like Brajvasis and Pandavas, like it's the effect of heat and cold. Like when we touch the heat, my hand is gonna turn brown, right? The same thing, like we get a frostbite. The same feeling is like my hand is again, if I get a frostbite, my hand is again going to have the burn. It looks that the cause is the same, but the effect is the same, the burning sensation, but the cause is so different. One is cold and one is heat, right? So similarly, like some people say that, oh, I don't want to join Krishna consciousness, there's so much of sufferings inside. So look at the cases of Pandavas, like who would want to be a devotee of the Lord if there's so much of suffering, right? Krishna always put his devotees in suffering, that and then he says that, oh, you care about us. But that is from the material perspective, like heat and cold. But if you see that having the same, but the effect, the cause is different, like the suffering of a non-devotees and suffering of devotees, because the suffering of devotees will bring us closer to Krishna. That's why Kunti Mana is saying that I want the suffering again and again. So we all know about, we all know about, like many of you have participated in Maharaja's drama. So in drama as well, okay. Okay, I was just talking about him, and here he appears. Here in the purport, it says that the whole situation we should see from the spiritual point of view, or it will not be seen at all, right? So I will talk about like how Krishna is the greatest actor. He's a Natvar. He's the greatest dancer, and he is the greatest actor. So, but there's always a difference between drama and a movie, right? Like, in the movie, I'm not sure how many of you have seen dramas when you were young, the real dramas. Like right now, because of Bhakti Amar Maharaj, we can see the dramas. But the actors performing the dramas, they go through the feelings, right? Like the last Rath Yatra, we had a drama of Sakshi Gopal, and it was so nice. The actors performing the drama of Sakshi Gopal, the feelings that actors were portraying it, the same feelings the audience was feeling it too, right? Like, is that like why? It's like not that. It's not that someone broke the promise of mine, but I was also feeling so sad, just by looking at the drama. So my point over here is that the good tragedy, like the tragedy is always bad, but the tragedy which is good is appreciated again and again. So the suffering that we see in the lives of devotees, it's appreciated, and they want it again and again, right? So it's kind of like transcendental and material, right? The difference that we talked about before. Also that the same thing that we were talking about, that Krishna is like an actor, has been said by Kunti Devi in Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st Canto, 8th chapter, 19th shloka. The translation is that being beyond the range of limited sense perception, you are the eternally irreprocable factor covered by the curtain of deluding energy. You are invisible to the foolish observer, exactly as an actor dressed as a player is not recognized. See, it's like exactly as an actor. Kunti Maharaj is stressing the same point, that exactly as an actor, you are not recognized. But it's not that Krishna is pretending. When Krishna is scared from Mother Yashoda, he's really, really scared. It's not that he's pretending. Like nowadays, that the definition of natak, like definition of drama is like, pretending. It's not pretense. Krishna, as I said before, that Krishna is really performing. It's like, how actors on the stage are performing and bringing out the feelings. The same way Krishna is performing. And why he's performing? Because he wants to bring out the same feelings in his devotees outside, like, the reciprocation. So Krishna being, I'm not sure if I'm able to explain this, but it's like he is kind of acting. Why? Because he wants to bring out the emotions out from his devotees so he can reciprocate, and there can be an exchange. But again, this is not a drama. He's not pretending. He's actually doing it. When he's fearful, he's really fearful. When he is killing, like, any pastime you see, he's really doing it. So so that is the principle of ras. That is the that is the rus, that the enjoyment that that Krishna, and why is he doing it? Because he is doing it just to attract us so that we can go back home, back to Godhead. Like this is what the exchanges are between Bhagwan and his devotees. So as I said that the person watching the drama, like like any drama that we watch, he becomes Saradaya, like one with the actor. The actor's feeling becomes the audience's feeling, right? So that is like how the like-mindedness comes by drama. That's how we get to see from Krishna's drama too. I heard about a drama in which like how in India, even when I went to Vrindavan once, they were performing a drama of like the Brajvasis, local Brajvasis were performing a drama of Radha and Krishna, and then there was separation between Radha and Krishna, and audience was crying. It was like they were so attuned with the actors that they had that same feelings of, and why were they crying? And then they said like once more, once more. So if crying is really bad, then why would they want to cry again and again? Because crying brings so much of joy. That separation, that crying brings so much of joy. And that's as I talked about the separation, right? So we'll talk about separation. I'm not sure how much we can cover up. But it says that the ecstasy of separation, there is like how one is so ecstatic to have the separation, and people, the devotees would beg again and again from Krishna that we want this kind of separation, we want this kind of separation from you, because in separation I feel closer to you. That's why when there's a union and separation, Radharani will always choose separation from Krishna, because in union Radharani can see Krishna, only one Krishna, but when she's separated from Krishna, he can see Krishna everywhere. So that's the but people would say like, why would you separate, why would you not be together? But separation brings so much of joy, a joy greater than the union with Krishna would bring. And so that's that's how our movement is all about. The goal of our movement, the goal of our being Krishna conscious is to have a vipralambha bhav, like feeling the separation of Krishna all the time. To have this feeling, it's kind of some devotees, I would say like devotees like our Goswamis, Raghunath Das Goswami, when at the end of his very life, he was living in Radhakund, and he was feeling so separated from Srimati Radharani, that he wrote a book of Vilap Kusumanjali. Vilap is the tears, Kusum is the flower, and Manjali is like the bouquet. This is like a tear book, the bouquet made of tears. And but in that separation, Raghunath Das Goswami was talking about how he was always in the external consciousness, even though he being living in the Bhomya Vrindavan. But then when his Leela would break, when he come down again to the external consciousness, he said that he would again yearn back to go back to his Mansik Seva, where he could serve Radharani in his eternal form as Rati Manjari. So that's how our Goswamis are also teaching us how to feel the separation. The greatest example is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu lived about last 12 years in Gambhira. If anyone have been visited Puri and have seen Gambhira is a very, very small room, like I would say 10 by 10. It's very, very small room. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu lived in Gambhira for last more than 10 years in a small room, having feeling the pangs of separation. If you read Chaitanya Charitamrita, he talks so much about the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu feeling separation. Like he was so tall, and his limbs would stand inside his body, and he would become like a tortoise. And why would Lord do if separation and suffering is not enjoyable, right? Like why would Lord do himself for so many years and would set an example for us if suffering is really suffering and separation is really separation? But we got to understand from these examples, from the examples of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, from the examples of Goswamis, from the example of Srimati Radharani, that separation is way, way greater than having union with the Lord. Similarly, more to say intensify, solidify this point more, in Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 47th chapter, 34th verse says, the translation is that, but the actual reason why I, the beloved object of your sight, have stayed far away from you is that I wanted to intensify your meditation upon me and thus draw your mind closer to me. So this is this in this chapter the chapter is entitled as the Song of the Bee, in which Krishna leaves Mathura and then he sends his messenger. From this messenger, the Krishna is telling this message to Radharani and the gopis. And in the second shloka, the very next shloka, in the answer to this, 10:47:35, it says that when her lover is far away, a woman think of him more than he is present before her. Absorption of mind that happens in separation can never happen in union, because your mind can firmly think of me in separation. So it's such a nice point, like when someone is gone, we think about, oh, this things belong to this person, this thing belongs to that person. We constantly think of that person all the time. And that's what really makes us Krishna conscious, that. But I would also like to emphasize the point that having that feeling of separation is not easy. We chant to have that feeling of separation, to have that longing, but it doesn't come so often. It doesn't come all the time, every time. And whenever it comes, we should really, really appreciate. And whenever it doesn't come, we should long for it. When we'll have that separation? We are easily we have so much things to do in our life. We go on, we do our Krishna consciousness, and things come and go, and we are so busy with everything. But when the suffering comes, we really, really think of Krishna, and we really feel separation from Krishna. Oh, this is enough of material world. I don't want to stay here. I really want to come back to you. So that's what suffering really teaches us. So because Krishna loves us, Krishna really wants us that we go to him. He gives us suffering so that we feel separation, and that will in turn intensify sanchari bhav, and that will lead to a sthai bhav. I hope it's making sense. But I feel that the separation that goes from.
Explain the last part again, the chronological order that you just explained.
Oh, it was so spontaneous. What did I say? Oh, so as I said, I was talking about like how the separation is really, really important, but it doesn't come all the time. We are not crying like Raghunath Das Goswami all the time. If we see Raghunath Das Goswami on the banks of Sri Radha Kund, he was crying day in and day out. Like he was not eating, he was not sleeping, he was only thinking of going back to her mistress, going back to Srimati Radharani. So as a conditioned soul, when we sometimes by the mercy of our Guru, Acharya and Krishna and Radharani, when we do have that feeling of separation, where we only want Shri Krishna's lotus feet and nothing else, and that's a transitory, that kind of enriches our sanchari bhav. But once it's gone, we should always long for it. Oh, it's gone. It's such a short phase of life that we really, really cry while chanting, or we really, really cry while dancing, while listening to our favorite kirtan, when our favorite singer. That really intensifies our devotion. It really intensifies our mood of our our relationship with the Supreme Lord. But once it's gone, we should always yearn for it, because that will help us to have a relationship, a strong foundational relationship, the sthai bhavs. Sorry, yeah.
I heard from Govinda Swami Maharaj. I said that in order to feel separation, you have to get Krishna first.
Yeah.
I think that is related with to have darshan. I don't know, it's my speculation. To have darshan of Krishna at least in the heart. So once that we have the darshan of Krishna, we can feel the separation. It's like that.
I would say that Maharaj is whatever he says is always but again in that Maharaj response, I have something to share from Shivram Maharaj. It says that, as you said, the same point is solidified here. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami has given a very nice analogy. I would say the translation. If one tastes such love of Godhead, he can compare it to hot sugar cane. When one chews a hot sugar cane, his mouth burns. Yet he cannot give it up. Similarly, if one has but a little love of Godhead, he can perceive its powerful effects. It can only be compared to poison and nectar mixed together, as you said, right? Like if you have little bit love of Godhead, you will definitely feel separation from the Lord. But it's like as Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, it's like a chewing a hot sugar cane. Like it's very hot, you can't chew it, but you really don't want to spit it out because it's so tasty. Similarly, like love of Godhead is so nice, but and has so much of sorrows and so much of separation that sometimes you feel like I don't want it because so much of separation and sorrow. But at the same time, it's so like a sugar. It's so sweet that we don't wanna let it go. So that's how that even in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Sanatan Goswami explained the same thing. That the translation, the verse is there. The translation is that although due to separation from Krishna, a loving devotee initially burns in the blazing forest fire of apparent misery and lamentation. He in fact experiences a joy exceeding the transcendental bliss of meeting and thus relishes indescribably wonderful ecstatic symptoms. This truth is known only by Rasika devotees. But this is what the goal of life is, to follow the acharya, to follow them, whatever they have said, right? That's what that say. Suppose if, as you said, right, without separation, union would not be so tasteful. Like if we are not separated from the Lord, how when we see the Lord in Golok Vrindavan, it's not a happy meeting, because we did not suffer for it, we did not had pain for it. So Rupa Goswami said that in order to have separation, in order to have union tasteful, one should have separation. So it goes like in hand, right? So there's constant, but again the thing is that constant union will destroy the relationship. Like if you are having, like familiarity breeds contempt. That's how it goes. That if you're so familiar with someone, you'll just take it for granted, right? He's always there, she's always there. But when there is separation, right, we value that relationship, we value that person so much. So constant union will destroy the relationship, and it will take things for granted. Therefore, again, therefore Krishna leaves the gopis because during Rasa Leela. So I would say that separation acts as a nourishing factor of union, and since it's such a nice parody, like since Krishna put so many devotees in so much of suffering and so much of separation, and so Radharani, there's a very nice pastime when Krishna went to Dwarka, and when then he came for the solar eclipse, when he came for the Rath Yatra in Kurukshetra, and when the gopis came there, and there was a very nice conversation between Radharani and Shri Krishna, and Radharani was complaining that you have put us in so much of suffering and pain, and I wish the same comes upon you. And that happened. Like how? Like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it did happen. Like whatever Radharani said, that I wish that whatever suffering that we have gone through, whatever pain that we have gone through, the same happens to you. Because Vrindavan was like, everyone was crying every day, day in and day out, for Shri Krishna when he left them for Mathura and Dwarka. So then, to make Radharani's word true, he took a form as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, where I told that he was living in Gambhira for years and years and crying and beating himself in separation from the Brajvasis. That's what. But again, we have to see this thing from a different aspect as well. That these are all liberated souls. The separation suffering is for Nitya Baddha Jeevs, right? But like say suppose like two friends or father and son are acting in a drama of getting separated, but at home they are together, right? You have to see from that aspect as well, that they are just acting it out, that like father died in an accident in a drama, but father and son are living, and son is suffering so much in the separation of father. But again, both father and son are together in the same house, in the same room, right? So the separation that of Kalya Nag, that the inhabitants are undergoing, the Pandavas, that they are going separation, but in the spiritual world they are still united, right? They come here to show us how to feel separation, so that we can have union with Shri Krishna. And when Shri Krishna he came here, like when he goes like to all the universes to perform different leelas, but at the same time we have also to understand that in Golok Vrindavan they are all together, right? That is that aspect also we have to understand from the light of Shastras. I think I would like to pause here and open the floor of corrections, questions. Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I really like how briefly you explain about separation from Krishna. I used to ask my mom, like when I will go to Vrindavan, it's been so many years, and she was like, it's his way of keeping close ones close. So
yeah, that's true.
separation is important. Like,
so when you go to Vrindavan, really, you will so much appreciate that. You will. Yeah, that's true.
So people who live around Vrindavan, they go like every month they can go. But people who live far from Vrindavan, it's like
Yeah,
feeling of closeness. So
that's true.
I really like
That's
how
true.
you
Thank you.
briefly explain about separation.
Thank you. That's it. We should conclude. Any more questions, corrections? Yeah.
You said that our end goal is the Pulamba Bhava.
Yeah. Yeah, as I mentioned that all our acharyas, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they came here to show that separation from Krishna, right? That Radharani says the same thing, that I would prefer a separation over union, because she can see Krishna everywhere in separation, but in union he can see only one Krishna, right? So that goal of Vipralamba, so much of separation, will allow us to have union with Krishna in our, when we go back home, back to Godhead, right? Like if we take things for like, if we don't feel separation from Krishna, our meeting with Krishna will not be so tasteful. So that's how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, he himself had to, if you read Chaitanya Charitamrita, there are so many symptoms of separation that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu manifest while having the separation while he was in Gambhira. The room is so small and he is like way taller than the room, but he still was living in this room for many, many years and had that separation, just to show us like why would Lord undergo suffering, but just to teach us that the devotees should feel the separation so that they can go closer to Krishna. Anything more?
I'm not able to frame the question, but I can ask after.
Sure, no worries. Okay. That's it. Yeah.
Thank you, Mataji. Just wanted to, it's a technical question. Just wanted to know the difference between Sthai and Sanchari Bhav.
Sanchari Bhav is a transitory feeling that, which will. So we all have Sthai Bhav. We all have eternal relationship. It's just a matter of time that it's going to surface up. Like each one would have a relationship with Krishna, right? Like say suppose like maybe as a friend, maybe as a servant, or maybe as a parent, or whatever. But that feeling, that Sanchari Bhav, like say suppose you're in so much of distress, like how would you pray to Krishna? Oh Lord, please protect me, or oh my friend, please protect me. That difficulties will really nourishes our Sanchari Bhav, which is very transitory, which is kind of like come and go, like kind of a come and go kind of a feeling, right? But that reflects our eternal relationship, like which will only come when we have pains and when we have miseries. In what relationship you really call for Krishna, right? So that reflects our Sthai Bhav. That's it?
I have a question.
Sure.
In devotional service, it feels like the case comes and goes and comes and goes. But because of the close association of the devotees, we are able to maintain this devotional service of ours. How can we maintain this? Let's say if we move out of temple or like we don't have this devotee association, how can we strengthen our sadhana that even if we are not able to do it, we just keep doing it and just not fall down from the spiritual path?
Yeah.
How can we keep doing this?
By sometimes like you have taste, you don't have taste, but you have to keep going on by following strict sadhana, by setting up ourselves like, standards that I am going to wake up at 5, although not up at 3 o'clock, but, if I'm getting like at least by 5 and at least by 7 o'clock, no matter what happens. I have seen such an austere devotees in my life that they don't even eat or they don't even drink before they finish the 16 rounds. That, you can have that kind of sankalpa in front of the deities, that no matter what happens, that I'm not going to eat or drink something, whatever suits your bodily demands, that I'm not going to do until I finish my 16 rounds, or until I do this, or until I worship my deities, right? And once you I remember the same question haunted me as well when I was living in temple for many years ago, and everything is so nice here, right? Everything is like, it's like living in Vrindavan. This temple is like living in Vrindavan because everything reminds you of Krishna. But when you move outside the material world, right, that's the thing, that when our devotion is really tested, that's when you really have to be a staunch devotee that comes by following our sadhana, by having deities at home, so that we make a center. If not deities, at least the photos of our lords, so that they become the center. Whatever we do, we offer it to them. We cook, we offer it to them, and then we have the prasadam, and that help us keep us regulated. And it's like, also we need to understand the meaning of having association. Association is something that is not hanging out with devotees. Association is not that I am living with devotees, and association is something that you get something from, you learn something from that association, right? So when you're living outside the temple, you got to make sure that, if I'm taking TTC, I make sure that I plug in headphones and listen to class, or listen to at least one class a day, right? Like at least 20 minutes a day that I listen something. And if you, no matter what happens, sometimes you really don't feel, it's like sometimes it really feels boring, but you got to really listen to your intelligence, listen to your soul and not to your mind, and keep it going. And one day Krishna will be so pleased that he will give taste in the holy names, that holy names are sweeter than Krishna, but we don't relish and realize it at this point, but we got to keep going. One day by the mercy we will realize that. No problem. Would like to end here?